Recording in progress. Okay, so we're going to take a gesture sculpt we did earlier in the semester. So this would be an option to have a second finished character or just to finish polishing Monsterclay with your character. So you can see very quickly with the character we did the eyebrows and the horns. Just kind of still have what I call the pasta noodle effect. That's where you just kind of roll the worm or the little noodle and stick it on the surface, right? And the arms are undefined still. The hands are really rough. I just did a little spatula and just slapped them on there. So, but let's focus on the face. So one thing you can do is take your X-Acto blade, and if there's anything that's in the way, if this thing had no armature in the hand, I could just take the blade and just cut the pieces right off. And this is how you would normally work with a character in production. So if you were making a sculpture, it's going to be an action figure, or you're going to cast or mold it, you would typically finish the sculpture all the way and then cut it up into parts using the jeweler saw or the different blades, and then mold the different pieces and then reassemble it. So I just moved that hand out of the way so I can focus on the face. So we just did the raking technique for the dog leg, and unfortunately I didn't record it, but this is doing some of the finished polishing techniques. So I'm going to do 2 raking passes and then a polish pass. The first rake is going to be with the thicker guitar wire, and then a second rake with the smaller guitar wire. And what you can do while you're raking is you can also move this camera out of my way a little bit. You can also do color shaping at the same time. So don't feel like you need to shape all the shapes perfect and then rake it. So I know that's where Yuna's at, and that's where I think Ethan's got actually all the shapes are done already. But feel free to use the rake tool to kind of bring out some of the color, I said color shaping again, didn't I? Dang it. Construction shaping. So I do want to go through this guy a little bit for the bony protrusions, and since he was just a speed gesture sculpt, you can see how rough the clay is in the jawline. There's no real jawline here, so I'm going to take little balls of clay. I just want to at least build up anything that maybe just to detail it a tiny bit more. So I have my little pre-rolled piece of wax here that I could just pinch from, and just 2 sides equal. I'm just making sure he has a jawline. And yeah, having that hand and mic out of the way is super handy. So if there's something in, the ears on your character, usually like this little ears, his ears are quite big in proportion to his body, but if the ears were floppy or bent or really in the way, I would just cut them off and set them to the side and reattach them. So you want to feel comfortable cutting up your sculpture. And the ball tool comes in really handy here too, so you can kind of push underneath and kind of stroke the clay and fill in the seams at the same time strengthening the clay and helping color shape the jawline here. So I'm just kind of doing the jawline. So the jawline up through the throat, you really want to define a nice shadow for the jawline for your character. So the little bevel on the edge, remember, watch out for any sharp 90-degree cuts. And usually the throat itself, whether it's the male or female Adam's apple or no Adam's apple, either way, you're still going to have a throat, the trachea, kind of connecting from the neck to the underneath part of the jaw. So although underneath the jaw isn't something you will see a lot of, and we talk about not spending too much time on things you won't see, you do want to just go through quickly and at least do a quick pass on the jawline and make sure the jawline comes down on the side here. So I'm using the ball tool to kind of rake a lot of that detail. And I can feel it strengthening. I can feel it pressing the clay into the cracks and crevices where I had assembled, like right here at the back of the neck. There's a ball of clay. There's like a big crevice line in there. As I drag the clay across and push, it's strengthening as well as helping transition from the round shape of the cranium to the cylindrical shape of the neck. And just go around the whole thing. And so just kind of quickly getting one surface. I guess this would be technically considered part of the raking technique. So I'm just kind of getting all those in. Now I can switch over to my rake tool. And no special tricks here in getting into weird places. I guess how you hold the tool, you can always do a twist. Kind of rock the tool back and forth. And you're just using your fingers and muscle memory to kind of rake. And you get little balls of clay. So as the balls of clay come off, you want to dab those onto a little piece of Monsterclay to the side there. Looking okay. Ready to rock out. And let's see, where's my little tiny ball? There we go. Inside the mouth, you're not going to see much. So, but I do want to push in those corners, make sure the shadow's catching. Because having his mouth open, belting out a big note, whatever he's doing, you want to make sure that that shadow is nice and deep in there. I'm not going to do too much detail in the teeth or anything like that, so I'll just leave it. And go back to the jaw here. Remember, you can push the clay into the crevice too and shape as you go. You don't necessarily just raking. And then slide it across really gently. After I push hard, now I can kind of rake gentle on there. And just like that, you get a nice smooth transition from the cheekbone down to the jaw. It's fun, it's meditative, doesn't require a lot of skill, and there's a big payoff at the end. It's like when you do when you're cleaning your car. If any of you have cleaned your car before yourself, it's like when the first time you wax your own car. Like you can clean your car, you can scrub it and clean it, and it looks great. But when you wax your car, it's, yeah, that's different. That's waxing. So no pun intended, but we're using wax clay here. It's a wax-based clay. So again, a little fill in the crevice, grab a little noodle of clay and just push it gently into the crevice. And then transition, you're transitioning between solid shapes. So I'm raking between the solid shape of the cheekbone right here that goes back to the ear, trying to get that surface plane defined. So I'm doing my planar shapes at the same time as I'm raking. Rake down to the jawline. And then you're transitioning, so you're doing like a nice little scoop. You're raking to do a smooth transition from the jawline to the muscle down to the sternocleidomastoids. And the mastoid muscles are the two of the big muscles on each side of your jaw that connect your neck to your cranium. Those are basically your neck muscles. They go right along here from under the ear, forward down, and connect to the front of your collarbone. So I'm going to keep them the more graphical, the less anatomy has, the better for me, since several of you are doing more graphical characters. So I'm not going to get all crazy and anatomical. I'll make it more like a Pixar Disney character and just keep everything kind of rounded off. So that's the big difference for graphical and photorealistic, is just rounding off and smoothing transition details between muscles and bones and not over defining. There you go. So see the rake marks on the face, pretty clear. So I just do that. It's going to look really good when it's done. So I'm going to quickly go and I'm going to rake this whole thing. So I'm going to go underneath the neck. I'm not going to define the collarbone or sternocleidomastoid too much. I'm just going to kind of round those off a little bit, knowing they're there, but kind of making that design decision. Like I could put the little nape of the neck in here and push that in where the muscle's coming, which would be my nature. As much as I love anatomy and comparative anatomy, I'm going to say, no, I want to make this more of a Pixar maquette and less of a, I don't know, Arcanum, or I don't know what other type of movie this would be in. Persona, anime. Come around the side here very quickly. Just start off easy, do the easy stuff first. that is fill in the crevices and get rid of the peaks and valleys. So when you initially put the clay on rather rapidly, you want to get rid of those big clay marks where like one ball of clay was kind of pushed onto another ball of clay. So very quickly, see there's a little gap right there. As soon as I find a little gap, roll myself a little noodle and fill that in. I had to do the same thing on the other side too. Fill that gap in front of the ear. So within about 30 minutes, that's my goal here. This should look pretty good to do a face. So if you give yourself, if you're still cracking away on your character, everyone's working hard and you're coming to the finish line, give yourself 30 minutes at the end and do the face. If you're getting one good character done for tonight, budget 30 to 45 minutes to do the face of what I'm doing now. And I'll post this video, and hopefully if people who still have time, who don't have to work today and do other stuff, can actually sit and watch do the face while I'm doing the face. So you could even follow along and do your face now, and at least you have something touched on the face. And then when you're going back to the other major areas, it kind of, doing the face is usually pretty inspirational. Because that's, you're like, ooh, I can see his character now. I can see he's coming through. This is like a little happy MC devil guy, little gremlin imp entertainer. I don't know if anyone does karaoke. Karaoke is the white folks say. When I was in Japan, they said karaoke. I said, "Ayo, karaoke." Karaoke. Yes, I was gun shy. They tried so hard to get me to sing, I never did it, and I was forever afraid of karaoke. And then I just got into it recently, and it's like super fun. But everyone's like, "Oh, hey, Gaijin, come over here. Oh yeah, come on, do it." And I'm like, "No, you guys are scaring the shit out of me. I'm not going to get up on the stage and sing. Are you crazy? Hell no." It was super fun. That was 1990. I was 17, and it changed my life. As an exchange student, I went there, and I was pretty big slacker. Like I almost failed high school. And I went over there, and like my Japanese oto-san, okasan, mother and father, and my brothers and sisters were going to night school, juku. And yeah, and I'm over there, and here I am, just horrible American boy, California, like barely going to classes, flunking, like cutting classes, trouble child. And I went over there, and I saw how hard they were. Like, wait a minute, you go to juku willingly? Like it's optional? Like you don't have, wait, you're going to go to school extra 2 nights a week. High school, and it's optional. And I was just blown away. So when I came back to America, I was like, okay, I gotta get my act together. I'm a slacker. I can't be that bad of a student. I'm not that dumb. So yeah, I love Japan. Best arcades, 1990. Got to see all the state-of-the-art arcades and all my favorite anime. I got to see the real version, which made my brain melt. I'm like, whoa, you can't show this in America. The Chronicles of the Lodos Wars and the Star Blazers and all the classics I saw. The unfiltered versions, like, oh, this is way cooler. Yeah, anyone speak Japanese? You speak Japanese? Are you Japanese heritage in some parts of your family? Oh, Korean, okay. Yeah. 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 Oh, nice. Must have had a lot of fun. The best food. Oh, that's scary. Are we in the southern Japan then? Oh. Yeah, like down near Shikoku, the southern island. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's where I was most of the time. Okay, eyelids are pretty tricky. So if you have the glass eye or beads or something, it really helps a lot to define the eyelids. So this guy, one of the things you'll do on accident with the dragon eyes is you'll put eyes in that are just way too big. And the eyes are usually set like way deep down in the eye socket. Like deep set eyes, you know, even if you have different face types from, you know, different heritages, different characteristics, they're pretty much shared across humanities. Like we all have very similar features actually, and you'll find features that are more prominent in one region of the world. Actually, you'll find the exact same features in other regions. They're just not as common. So it's just different phenotypes, different genetic expressions. So when you're doing the eye socket, really dig the eye socket deep. So this guy's eyes are really bulging out of his head. I just kind of did a speed sculpt really fast. So I'm going to do some noodles and show you how to noodle, turn the noodle into more of an eyelid. So you really want that inner tear duct. There's a couple specific tools I use. Now I'm bumping his ears, so I have to be careful and decide, okay, do I need to take the ears off and do this separately, or can I leave them on? I'm going to just leave them on for the speed of the demo, but I am going to take his horns off. I'm going to pop these off. So, and if they're stuck on there good, great. I will just take my X-Acto blade and very carefully give it a nice smooth cut. And the harder your clay is, the cleaner your cut can be. If your clay is really warm and mushy, sometimes when you go to cut, it'll kind of mush on you and change the shape a little bit. So just be careful. And I always set them aside. I remember I got my little pin rack, right? I didn't see anyone make a pin rack this semester. I got around to making their pin rack. If you want to keep at this, man, make a pin rack. Oh, life is so much easier. I just take my two horns here. I know exactly which one's left, which one's right, and I stick them on the pin rack. And I can actually work on them now easy like that too. I can sculpt on my horns on the pin rack. And you see I got a hand there, I got a little face demo going. This is the face I was telling you got all munched up so bad over the years because I didn't have a pin rack for it. Whoa. That's using the smoothing techniques, the oil that we did earlier. So now the horns are out of the way. Cool. So I can kind of focus on some of the missing gaps here around the temple region. There's like a big indentation there and over there. So make sure I'm doing good on time. 3:30. Okay, I'll go for another 15 or 20 and then I'll switch over to Unreal. Fill in the temple and just kind of pinch with my hands, make sure both sides are relatively even. And the lower eyelids don't move all that much except for the muscles that raise. Like if you really smile or do disgust and some others, the muscles will push the lower eyelid up, but they don't slide much. They don't like rotate up and down as much as nearly as much as the upper eyelids do. So for this guy, if he's really belting out a note here, his lower eyelids might come up to show his joy or his pain. So I'm kind of push a little extra clay and make the lower eyelids push up and cover a little bit more of his eyes. So his eyes are taking on a little bit better characteristic now. They're not quite so buggy. They're a little bug-eyed as I just kind of slapped them on there during the gesture speed sculpt. And I'm using the round tool, little ball at the end. If you don't have a ball tool, you can usually just figure out something with a pen or round the tip of a piece of aluminum wire. There we go. And at the same time, little balls are coming up, so I'm just kind of pushing little balls of clay. So I'm kind of just pushing that over and then making sure I'm covering the end. There it goes. And I'm already seeing, now he's looking a little older. I'm like kind of, the deeper the recesses, the more there's wrinkles, the older the character is going to look. So I'll go ahead and make him look a little bit older. And it's okay to use adjectives still. You could say older, taller, thinner, fatter. It's okay. I'm older. I got wrinkles all over my face now. Character lines, right? My euphemisms. Definition. There we go. So I'm kind of defining that a little more. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. What's that ball of clay? I'll take the rubber tip tool. So if anyone's got the pack variety, these little soft rubber ends are the preferred tool, I think, for going in and really detailing it out. But if you don't have one, that's fine. I'll just use the smaller guitar wire, since I think most of you got it, at least got the wire tools going. There you go, filling in that temple region a little more. Make sure I do both sides equally as I'm working. Trying to keep them relatively symmetrical. Okay, let's rake the rest of this. So the lower eye socket, lower eyelid here. I'm gonna push in with the wire tool and kind of separate where the eye socket is and where the eyelid is. So as I do that, I'm gonna get little bags under his eyes. Little groove there, and I'm rolling my fingers and doing a twisting motion. So learning to roll your fingers and get that tilt. You can't do that on a computer. You can't do that with a Wacom pen. This is where the tactile beauty of traditional sculptor is just superior to digital in every way. So you can actually, you can take your tool, you can tilt it, you can twist it, and you can also tilt it forward and backward. So you can do all of those motions in one clean sweep. And when you practice, can you what? Balk it? I'm not sure what words you're saying. Help me. Oh, bop it. Gotcha. I'm slow. There we go. All right, so I got that separated. So now I want to separate the lower eyelid and the actual cheekbone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rake tool, and from the bridge of the nose here, I'm just going to pull and rake that clay down from the bridge of the nose into the cheekbone. Very carefully. And this is just years of anatomy. You have your anatomy charts in front of you. Where's the bone? But you do want to separate, at least for this character, I want to separate the eyelid from the cheekbone. And you'll most likely, no matter how graphical your character is, you'll have that separation of the eyelid, and just push the clay in a little bit as I go. His mustache is getting in the way a little bit. A little handlebar mustache, so I'm going to take my tool and just push gently and twirl, curl that up from the cheekbone, go to the other side here. It got matted down to his face, I think during the heat wave, and then just curl that upward and forward. Same thing, if it is hindering my progress, I'll take a razor, cut it off, put it back on. Because usually I would have done it at the end, but since we're speed sculpting, gesture sculpting, you know, we're going out of order a little bit here. I would have had the face done fairly completely first before I put that mustache on, so I could come back to that. The little spoon and spatula tool comes in really handy also, this little guy, little spoon dip. So if you need to cup and curl an arc in, if you need to flip it the other way and push an arc back into the socket. This is a little bigger than I would prefer for this scale of, oops, I just ruined his lower eyelid, shit. I have to put a noodle back in. I'll just focus on one side. So yeah, there we go. I'm gonna just add that cheekbone muscle here and take the spatula tool and again, twist and tilt and push. And it's already getting pretty smooth, so I'm also minimizing as I'm doing my solid shape, constructive shapes. I'm also saving on rake time by using the, by smoothing it as I go a little bit. So I'm trying to doing that on purpose. There we go. And now he has a cheekbone. So same thing on the other side real quick. Another little noodle. Take my spatula or the ball tool or whatever. Or the rake tool and just push that clay in. Again, drag from the bridge of the nose down into the cheekbone. That's one of your main planes. And yeah, it's tool's a little too big with my tiny little ball. Use the small ball. And try and keep that separation here. The tear duct is pretty pronounced. Doing a tear duct on a sculpture this size is really hard to do, and if you have the whole thing to worry about, so I'm not even going to get into that. If you're like still color shaping and raking your entire sculpture, the tear duct would be last to your worries. So, but just pointing out, it's something to keep in mind if you wanted to do the detailed eye. And the brow here, those little noodles here, I'm going to blend those noodles now into his skull, so the brow ridge now becomes part of the sculpture, not just noodles that look like they were stuck on to the surface. Which you'll probably find a lot of in your sculpture, because you realize when you're going fast, you kind of roll them and stick them on, and then you forget to come back to them, or you don't get the chance to do them before you bake the sculpey, whatever, it's fine. There we go. Okay. So there is muscle in there with the bone, so make sure there's a little bit more brow in the center of the skull right here. Maybe a little bit more. Definitely have his brows raised to the expression. Yeah, I'm going to record for another few minutes, about another 10 minutes or so. It's done. There we go. And then just blend that up into the brow. The rake would work the same way if I switch over to my rake tool. I can actually round some of those contours down a little better. And I'll add back on his eyebrow and his horns. There's the separation for his hairline, so come to this angle here. And just very carefully, let me go ahead and cut his other hand off. It's in my way. Where did I stick his first hand? Hand with the mic. And laser, please. There we go. Laser that bad boy off. Again, it's soft and squishy, so just kind of hold it carefully and saw a little bit, and it should come right off. A little pin rack. So my pin rack is well populated with body parts. Makes life easier. And he's getting a lot more detail now, and I can see my natural habit of adding maybe more anatomy than is needed is coming out, so I'm just going to kind of, I'm hinting at those bony protrusions in the brow down to the nose, but I want to round them off and make them a little bit more, I hate the word cartoony, but I mean, I don't hate the word, but the implication. But yeah, more graphical, more cartoonish. Yeah, more stylized. There you go. I go raid my kids' room for the, they got a little shelf of action figures. There's the new Spider-Verse action figures. Pretty cool. But check out how they sculpted the action figure for the Morales and the Gwen characters. Okay, this is really mushy. I'm handling it. It's hot here in my studio. I have the heat lamp on over on the side. So what I could do is hit this real quick with the dust off. So upside down. And careful it's not getting all over my arm. It will freezer burn you. You'll get frostbite on your skin. But there you go, Frosty. He's a frosty old man. There we go. Now, there we go. That's easier to work with. Now I can rake this without it was just mushing. So as you're raking, if you find it mushing and you're handling it with your hand too much, maybe try and grab it by the base more or whatnot. And separating the hairline. You want to fade the hairlines carefully. Did a bit of hair in previous videos, but you want to just kind of hint at some dark grooves here and there, a few spots. Don't just without thinking, just go in and go scratch, 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 and scratch the exact same hair, and just pockmark a few spots, pick a few hair pieces out, and then let the rest fade gently into the scalp. But that little shot of dust off really helped. So if I continue on this one, I'd run them to the freezer and let them really cool off, and then work on it while it's frozen, and that make life easier. The upper eyelid usually overlaps the lower eyelid on the corners, as well as on the inner part, because like I said, the upper eyelid does most of the movement. Take my sharp tool in the corners here and just kind of chisel that corner back, and then add the crow's feet. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm just going to polish one side here for a moment. So I'm going to just bend his arm out of the way. It's wax, right? Just bend those limbs right out of your way. And ta-da, look at that. Change his gesture too. Ah, give Grandpa Elf a hug. And so now I can take the rake, and I'm going to go a little faster here for the last few minutes and just do the final polishing process that I did with the dog leg that I didn't record. And then I can look at your projects some more. So rake the whole thing, get rid of all the peaks and valleys, make sure there isn't any little pop marks left. For the ear, if there needs to be better separation in the ear, carve that away. Maybe I stuck extra wax in there like glue to keep the ear from falling off earlier. So this is with my larger guitar wire rake tool. You can see it's got crisscross patterns. I'm trying to make sure the rake direction follows the contours of the shape, the skull, the flesh, the expression muscles, whatever. Rake the whole thing. So I would do this to the whole sculpture. Again, shouldn't take you more than an hour. And it's where the magic happens. It's that last 10% that makes it look 70% better ish. If I find it's taking off too much, I'll switch over to my finer rake tool. And again, defining those canals, those channels, those color or shape separations. So I'm just making sure I have that shape between the eyelid and the eye socket separated a little bit more. Same thing here on the side. Okay, go back over with the finer rake now. Again, it's a little mushy. Chisel, chisel. Ah, how fun is that? Anyone got dust off handy? Check check your roommate, check mom and dad. If anyone's into computers, they probably have some dust off lying around. You just gotta hold it upside down, chisel it. There it goes. It's no longer mushing, now it's scraping. Really careful with the eyelid. Maybe just do as much as you need to do around the eyelid and then come back and do the final detail on the eyelid at the very end. Getting rid of as many of the rake marks as possible. Okay, just about ready to polish it, so you can kind of, it's your first time seeing this. You'll get to see the difference between when it's raked and when it's polished. Oops, went off camera. And keep picking any extra excess clay off my tool, a little circle of it. Are you making more coffee? Ooh. There it goes. And when you're pressing, when you're raking, you'll also find if there's any canyons or little crevices just underneath the surface that maybe you missed, and it pushes in all of a sudden, you want to, little balls of clay on your rake will usually fill right in for you pretty quickly, pretty easily. So again, 30, 40 minute mark, try and rake your faces, and then call it done and take your photos. All right, take my soft bristle toothbrush and just kind of brush really briefly. Really gently. I don't want to accidentally mess up the eyelids too much. I'm sure I am already, because the clay was too soft and crumbly. And since I'm doing a live demo, I don't want to go and run it to the freezer and wait 5 minutes. So that's what I would do. And all these little soft rounded areas around the eyelid are now becoming, they're showing through more, they're becoming more obvious. I'm just rubbing, I'm using the end, the round end as a burnishing tool. I'm just kind of gently caressing the surface to get rid of the rake marks. Okay, and then at the end here, I can just take my finger and just drag in. I can't remember about the eyelid for right now. This temple, you see the surface change of the light, the jawline. And let's do his horns. Reattach. And I would sculpt blend the horns if I was done. and maybe even do some minimal work on the horns. I have antlers in the apartment or in the house. We have deer in the backyard shed their horns. So I have a couple of deer horns, antlers, pull up good horn. Like every part of this, there's reference for, right? So I kind of know how the deer horns have these little sections. And it just takes a little bit, a suggestion of the shadow catching. Look at that. And studying horns and antlers is a ton of fun, especially with the clay. Okay, so just on the side of his face there he goes. He's looking more graphical, even though I didn't do his ear. Like just right here on the side of his face is a really nice soft transition going for it. So now I can take my brush and the oil and I can just start brushing, and it's going to get all the little crumbs. Everything's going to stand out. You're going to see a shine, like he's getting waxed. And down and around the neck. Looks like I finally ran out of oil, so the Myra Straight isopropyl, again, you could just get regular isopropyl alcohol and give it a shot. Should work fine. There we go. Just a tiny dab goes a long way. So I just put some on the bristles. There we go. And you can really see the shine. And so at the finish line, just get your isopropyl or Myra State isopropyl and just kind of brush your whole sculpture and see what it does to it. And you can also wipe that polish off with your finger. And come around the side over here. There's a certain way the light catches it, we can really see. There it goes. There you go. See that shine now? So working with your light and your lamp at a position where you're catching the specular highlights of your surface lets you see the detail better. So when you set up your lights digitally in ZBrush, I have a little custom lighting array. And you want to get pro level at it, you have your own lighting setup so that you're really seeing every little crevice and crack and detail that you've sculpted onto your surface. The light's going to catch it and show. And that's going to show how your normal maps show up on your characters as well. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be your highlight spot. So if you study your 6 shadow types in your core when you learn to shade when you're drawing, you have the core shadow and this highlight shadow. And so your specular highlight is going to be that hot spot. It's going to be that highest point. Exactly. Good question. So what I was talking about all semester is like having a little lighting stage set up. Like having your lighting set up where your workspace is really important. And so, and it only takes a couple lamps. You don't have to go buy stage lighting. You just need lamps. And that's why I was saying if you invest a few bucks into a Wi-Fi light bulb that has RGB and you control it with your phone, you can play with, hey, there's Kitty. Hey, Nixie. Must be getting close to 5 o'clock. It's not 4 o'clock. Oh, it's 4 o'clock. I went over. Okay, I'll stop here. But see how I'm just dragging my finger, Una? See how smooth it is now? Perfectly smooth. Beautiful. And it's satisfying too, because you have the oil. You know, it's makeup removal oil. You have this like super soft, organic kind of not nasty material on your finger. That, like a lot of the processes you work with, you're working with some kind of gnarly chemicals, right? Like that steel stick, you don't want that stuff touching your skin. But the Myra State's nice. And just that side right there, I'm pretty happy with, you know, not including his ear, which I didn't touch. But if you look at the side of his face, it's really smooth now. And see the top of his skull. Yeah, I put the horns on already. But I could put a bit of oil there where his hair is, and then just do a quick... You don't have to do all those raking passes I'm doing. I mean, if you're like, you know, crunching, just put it on there and just swipe it with your finger, and you can almost call it done from that. The clothing I mentioned earlier, so if I take my sandpaper, I want to give it like a, let's say he's got a felt or velvety material on his vest, right? Watch this. Uh-oh, here comes the big kitty. What are you doing? Don't you dare. Take the sandpaper as a 150 grit and just lightly doing little circular motions, and all of a sudden his vest is gonna, instead of being shiny, watch what happens. It's gonna be super soft. It totally changes its complexion. Instead of having that soft, waxy specular, it now has a soft, warm tone to it. And you can do the same thing with your Sculpey. Same thing digital. I would use a noise brush. Do a little noise pattern on there and give it like a all soft little noise. You do that with your bump maps. But there's a difference between... So I can get the light even. It's not showing up as well. Yeah, you'll just, there it is. You can see the tone difference between his neck and the vest. So it makes the materials pop off separately on there. Alrighty,